ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to a brand new edition of your weekday programme here on Nile TV International, The Daily Debate. I'm your host for tonight, Nancy Sarah Barakat. Today we're focusing on two main events that have been making headlines on the international arena. We're going to be starting off our episode with a look at the Brexit, as well as the protests that have been flaring up in France, Brazil, Venezuela, as well as Greece. Now, on the first half of the hour, we'll be discussing the June 23rd referendum that will see British voters decide on whether to leave the 28-nation EU bloc, a move being called the Brexit. British Prime Minister David Cameron is a firm supporter of the In campaign and has accused those backing a British exit from the European Union of lying to voters, and insisted he is not worried about the Remain side is losing ground in the battle for votes. In recent statements, Cameron also added that voters had to choose between credible experts warning about risks to the UK economic security on the one side and a series of assertions that turned out to be completely untrue on the other. International leaders have also voiced their opinions about the Brexit. For example, we saw German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who stressed that she hopes that Britain will remain in the EU, adding that Germany has very close cooperation on many questions with Great Britain and would be, of course, likely to continue this within the framework of the European Union. How does my guest evaluate the situation in Britain? What are the pros and cons of a Brexit? Are the British people being given the required information about that would enable them rather to make a concerted and a critical decision? That's going to be on the first half of tonight's programme. Now, later on, we're also going to be taking a look at the recent protests that erupted in France, Venezuela, Greece and Brazil. In France, and as the Euro 2016 Football Championship kicked off on Friday, the government was working overtime to settle a dispute with the state rail company SNCF. In Greece, dozens of protesters blocked the entrance to the privatisation agency in protest to the sale of the country's two biggest ports. Over in Venezuela, the situation is becoming increasingly tense in the capital, with violence and looting terminating in yet another face-off between protesters and security forces. While not too far away in Brazil, there are warnings against the serious setbacks to human rights in the country since Michel Temer and his government took power. What are the reasons behind these widespread protests in all these four countries? Is this the beginning of bigger protest movements that could reverberate across Europe and Latin America? That and much more coming up on the programme. But as always, we also like to shed light on some other stories making headlines here in Egypt. And we start off with President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who said that Egypt supports the Ethiopian people's right to development through the Renaissance Dam, but also stressed that the Nile River is the Egyptian people's only source of potable water. In his meeting with the irrigation and agriculture ministers, President el-Sisi said that a spirit of positivity should prevail over the negotiations between Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan. For his part, the Minister of Irrigation, Mohammed Abdel-Ati, told the President that the impact studies would include the mechanisms for the filling of the dam's reservoir. Egypt, Sudan and Ethiopia are currently conducting impact studies on the dam. Now, to tell us more, we're being joined over the phone by Dr. Dia Al-Qusi, water resources expert. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
You're welcome.
Let me start off by asking you what you made of the President's statements regarding the Renaissance Dam.
Actually, this is not the first time the President is talking about this subject, and he repeated this once, twice, and so many times now. And even in the Ethiopian Parliament, he talked about it, and during the signature of the principal declaration, which was signed in Khartoum,
right,
March 2015. This was clearly spelled all over the declaration, and it says clearly that Egypt has nothing to do with the developments on water in all Nile Basin countries, but in the meantime, Egypt is not actually prepared to lose even 1 cubic meter of its share of the Nile water that is allocated to Egypt according to international agreements. And this is a clear statement all over the place. However, the president is trying to extend all kinds of friendship, even sort of good relationship with all countries in the Nile basin,
right,
in order to reduce as much as we can any tension and any pressure on any party in the system.
Right. I also wanted to ask you about how you see the Ethiopian stance towards the Renaissance Dam and towards Egypt and Sudan's concerns.
I want to say also that the president was very much patient about this, because every now and then we hear one of the ministers here and one of the ministers there talking that we couldn't care less about any other countries, but we are going to carry on with the building of our dam, and whatever happens will not stop us, etc., etc. But the president actually is trying to express as much patience and as much ignorance of whatever speeches here and there that sort of lowers the relationship between the three countries, Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia. He's trying to eliminate any reason for any tension and pressure. And he's so far so good. He succeeds so far to send the message that we have nothing to do with the development we are not against energy sort of generation. We are not against agricultural development anywhere in the basin, but we are very much concerned about losing even one single drop of water of our shares. And this is like a red line that cannot be crossed actually.
Okay, I thank you very much, Dr. Dia Al-Qusi, water and irrigation expert, for your time and for your insights. Our second top story: Minister of Defense Sadi Subhi held talks Sunday with Vincent Stewart, head of the U.S. military's Defense Intelligence Authority in Cairo, discussing military cooperation between the two countries. Stewart, who is head of an official military delegation, also met with Military Chief of Staff Mahmoud Higazi, tackling issues of bilateral security cooperation as well as exchanging military expertise. The talks were attended by Stephen Beckford, the U.S. ambassador to Egypt, and other Egyptian military commanders. Now we come to our first report for the evening and a closer look at the Brexit and its consequences on Britain and Europe. And then we'll be back to discuss that. Stay with us.
Brexit is an abbreviation of British exit that mirrors the term Grexit. It refers to the possibility that Britain will withdraw from the European Union. The country will hold an in-out referendum on its EU membership on the 23rd of June. David Cameron, leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister since 2010, announced support for a referendum on Britain's EU membership in 2013. He said that the country would hold the vote before 2017 if the Conservatives were re-elected in the May 2015 general elections. They were, and Cameron pursued, a renegotiation of the terms of Britain's membership to be followed by a vote on Brexit. Cameron supports the in or remain side, sometimes dubbed Remain, arguing that the renegotiated terms he secured with the European Council President Donald Tusk are favourable to Britain. Skeptics on both sides say the renegotiation as political theatre, which Cameron was faced to perform as a result of his prior sympathy to Eurosceptic arguments. They reasoned that this skepticism was not completely genuine, but at least partly calculated to head off electoral challenges. The UK Independence Party in particular presented a challenge to the Conservatives leading up to the 2015 elections. UKIP's argument and Euroscepticism more generally also appealed to elements of the Tory base, and following the renegotiation, a number of prominent Conservatives have come out in support of the Leave. These include London Mayor Boris Johnson and Justice Secretary Michael Gove. Others see merit in the terms Cameron secured with the EU, which include exemption from the principle of ever-close union, enhanced recognition for the pound, a 4-year emergency break on in-work benefits to the EU migrants, and a red card system that would allow a bloc of EU parliaments to block legislations from Brussels. Most supporters of the in-camp base their opinion on the largely unforeseeable economic consequences of exit rather than an emotional attachment to the EU. Bank of England Governor Mark Carney called Brexit the biggest domestic risk to financial stability. Supporters of Brexit base their opinion on a variety of factors, from the global competitiveness of British businesses to concerns about immigration. Out-campaigners argue that Brussels bureaucracy is a drag on the British economy, that EU laws and regulations are a threat to British sovereignty. Popular support for Brexit has varied over time, but in and out sides have mostly been about evenly split.
Be the first to know. The news live at the site of the event. Information on events as they are happening. If it's breaking news, it's Nile TV. For ads on Nile TV, Egyptian Radio and Television Union, the economic sector, info@nileinternational.net, or call us on the following numbers.
Ladies and gentlemen, and for more insights on today's two main topics, I'm being joined here in the studio by Mr. Ahmed Salwan, political analyst. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Let me start off by asking you how you view the Brexit as a whole, and how did it come about, the whole idea of Britain leaving the European Union?
First, I want to congratulate everybody for Ramadan, and I want to say Happy Ramadan. And I want to remind the Muslims who live in Europe that they supposed to fast only 16 hours, according to Azhar, not 20 hours, because I used to live in Europe and I know how suffering and how hard it is that for people to work and fast for 20 hours. And as of what's going on in Europe right now, I think it's, as a democratic country and as it happened in democratic environment, some people wasn't happy about being in the European Union because of the restrictions, because of the new laws, because of the migration, because of finance, because of a lot of reasons. So now it's become kind of split over should they stay or shouldn't they stay. And even when they are participating in the European Union, they was kind of not fully participating in everything. So with this happening, and a lot of people wanted to be in and out, they decided to have a vote over that. And the vote is changing. Before they were saying that people would vote for staying or not staying, and I think it's very, very close margin. And we'll find out when the vote happens what will going to happen with that.
Right. But again, there's more to it. I mean, we're going to be talking for the next 30 minutes about the Brexit and, you know, how that would affect Britain and the European Union. First of all, let me just ask you, what are the pros and cons of Britain staying within the European Union or leaving the bloc?
Look, let's just say or understand that this is happening because of the economy in the whole world.
Right.
The whole world are facing a challenge, economic challenge now. After the crazy war being made by America, attacking everybody everywhere, this affects the American economy. And America is, you know, how big is the economy for the whole world. So when America was hit in economic, Europe felt it. And the world felt it. So we are still, for a long time, longer than I or anybody expected, in a recession. When the recession happened, when people are having a hardship and hard times, they start looking for different choices. They start looking for what can be done, for what's the reason. And I think this is one part of it. Otherwise, Europe, what they did, I think they was rushing very much to add other countries to European Union, Eastern Europe. East Germany, all this affected the economy. All this was a burden in European Union.
Right.
So that make people feel it, make people feel how hardships they have and how the economy is, and also the immigrant. You can see immigrants coming from all different countries now to England, which affects the people who's working there. They cannot find a job as easy.
Right.
With all these things, people start thinking, would it be better if we are out of this European Union or better to stay?
Why have the Europeans been so vocal? I mean, some people are saying this is a completely British affair, something that's very English, that has nothing to do with Europe or President Obama or anyone really having a say or having an opinion. Why have all these countries been very vocal about not wanting England to leave the European Union?
You should know better about that than me, but I really think the British are more nationalists. They are more, British are more proud of their heritage. They feel they are the strongest country in Europe. They feel that they are the power who's moving the Europeans. They feel that they are not gaining as much as they are losing.
Right.
But in fact, if they get out, the predicted loss for England is going to be around 220 billion English pounds.
A lot of people said that, though, when England said there was a debate a while back about whether Britain should stay with the sterling or adopt the euro.
Right.
And there was a very similar argument. A lot of people, you know, fear-mongering happened, and a lot of people said, you know, no, don't do that. You should adopt the euro, because then the sterling is going to lose against the currency, so on and so forth. The sterling now, if we're going to count it as is perhaps one of the strongest currencies in the world.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning this. I think that was one of the reasons for people to think about that.
Right.
Because you can see how the English pound is stronger than the euro. Also, the euro is not as strong in the other European countries. When I used to live in France, it used to have to be a franc. The franc was stronger than euro right now. Euro doesn't have a power or buying power as it used to have. English pound still has a buying power. People didn't feel that. People can tell that, yes, because we didn't do that, our currency is stronger. So there could be a reason pushing them. But trade is a different story. Trading with the European Union is different, because this will make them lose money, lose 200 billion, when the European Union will lose like 60 billion. So this is, you can always look from different point of views. You can have different point of views. Even experts, they cannot agree in one thing, who's losing and who's winning. But I personally believe that because of the economic situation in the whole world, that's what's going to happen in Europe, but that's what's happening in Europe. If this happened and England got out, and somebody should, I'm sure you say these things a lot, if England got out of this European Union, this would be the beginning of completely get out of European Union. This will affect the economy of Europe very bad. And now the only continent is really standing is Europe. Right. Economically, America is still not doing very well at all. So this can be a setback for the whole world economy if Europe Europe get this disagreement with this, and England got out of the European Union.
How does the Middle East as well? How does it get affected by whether or not the United Kingdom remains within the European Union?
we will get affected by the whole European Union effect. Like the effect will be felt first in Europe. And once the effect is felt in Europe, it's going to be felt by us because we depend on Europe a lot in trade and in a lot of things.
Right.
So we will feel it definitely because it's going to also affect the world and affecting the whole world as every country because of the European Union. Then we will be affected directly and indirectly.
Right.
That's what happens.
Let me ask Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi. He joins us now over the phone, head of the Egyptian-European Partnership. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Good evening.
I wanted to ask you, first of all, about your overall opinion about the decision by England to hold this referendum and how it came about in the first place.
I think that since Britain joined the EU, it is divided between those who in favor of being member of the EU and those who oppose it.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised if the result will be with or against. And of course, those who are against,
right,
they do not like the sort of competition against the industry in Britain, and of course for traditional reasons that they want the sterling to remain, they want the word Britain continue, and some psychological reasons. Those who are with the remaining in the EU, they are with the free economy, the free trade, which make gains to those who are ready to compete.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure really, I cannot expect whether the referendum will say yes or no, because early expectations are 55% withdrawing.
Right. But what do you think will be the consequences of the decision? What would be the consequences if Britain decides to stay, and what would be the consequences if Britain decides to leave?
You know that Britain is one of the big four,
right,
which are Germany, France, Italy, and Britain. Those are what we call net contributors.
Right.
Those who are paying more than they are gaining, and the others are on the opposite side. This will affect, of course, the budget a little bit. But you know, a huge economy like Germany, and the Germans are ready to sacrifice anything in order to keep the union continue.
Right.
Because the European Union is a replacement or can replace the German unity, because Germany lost, of course, part of its territory after the Second World War. And by the laws of moving in the Union, Germans can move easily and can see the other parts of their land. For us, as you well know, we have an association agreement with the 28 member states of the EU, Britain among them, and it is a main partner in our foreign trade. But I think that Egypt and Britain can replace this with another free trade area agreement in order to continue the same privileges whenever they trade together, to keep, because you know we are trading with Britain with zero tariff. We do not pay any custom duties for our exports, and the same for our imports from Britain. This can be replaced by other bilateral agreement instead, the multilateral one.
Can I also ask you about Britain's other obligations? If Britain does decide to leave the European Union, will it have to rewrite all its agreements with not just Europe, but I guess the international community as well, as a non-member of the European Union?
You know, it's not difficult, because now we have sort of same treatment for what they call it neighborhood or neighboring countries.
Right.
Ukraine, for instance, is not a full EU member, but it enjoys the free trade. It enjoys the same privileges with countries like Egypt based on the association agreement.
Right.
So I don't think Britain would go far than a neighbor country and will remain at least within the trade community arrangements of the EU.
Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, head of the Egyptian-European Partnership, I thank you very much for your insights. If I come back to you, Mr. Ahmed, just to ask you one final question about this particular topic. What do you think, how do you think Britons are going to vote?
Stay.
Right.
And I hope, certainly, that they stay. Because it's going to affect the whole economy in Europe and in the world. And in America even. And even America want them to stay. Most other countries. And that, as he said, Mr. Ambassador, is also Germany is going to carry a big burden to try to take over instead of England. And they're supporting the new countries, Eastern European countries. And also he said something about, I think they are thinking of having something like Switzerland's position is to being out of the European Union, but they will still have a free trade agreement, which they also try to reform the European Union. I think that's maybe it could be that also kind of pressure they're putting in the European Union to make some reforms and to make England allowed to have some law and not abide by the European Union laws.
Right,
That's
okay.
another thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, to our next topic for this evening, and a look at some of the protests that have been sweeping countries across perhaps not just Europe but Latin America as well, and then we'll be back to discuss that. Stay with us.
As the Euro 2016 Football Championship kicked off on Friday, the French government was working overtime to settle a dispute with the state rail company, SNCF. Foreign visitors and football fans arrived as the 9-day rail strike threatened to disrupt travel to the tournament that France is hosting in 10 cities across the country. Air France pilots, meanwhile, planned their own 4-day walkout from Saturday in protest over pay. Moreover, workers briefly blocked France's biggest wholesale market near Paris, part of a wave of demonstrations against government plans to reform the country's labor laws. Elsewhere in Athens, dozens of protesters blocked the entrance to Greece's privatization agency in protest to the sale of the country's two biggest ports. The sales of 67% stake in the port to COSCO for €368.5 million will be followed by a major stake of another port being sold later this year. The 80 state workers and members of communist-affiliated groups are demanding that their current labor status is protected under the New Deal. Separately, Greek MPs voted in favor of new austerity measures, including pension cuts, tax hikes, and new taxes on internet and television. Clashes with police broke out as thousands in Athens protested the move that Greece's creditors have been demanding. Meanwhile, the situation is becoming increasingly tense in the Venezuelan capital, with a day of violence and looting terminating in yet another face-off between protesters and security forces. Opposition politicians were assaulted by the suspected supporters of Socialist President Nicolás Maduro's government as they attempted to enter the headquarters of the Electoral Board. Elsewhere in Caracas, young people clashed with the police after a planned march from the country's top university to the Electoral Commission was blocked by officers in riot gear. Protests that rocked the Venezuelan capital over the weekend are the latest signs of a simmering crisis that's threatening to boil over in the South American country. Rival factions of pro- and anti-government activists took to the street of Caracas a day after President Nicolás Maduro declared a constitutional state of emergency. He also called for military exercises to take place next week and to prepare for any scenario, including a foreign invasion. In Brazil, former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva warned against the serious setbacks to human rights in the country since co-imposed Michel Temer and his government took power, as Brazil labor unions and social movements took to the streets Friday in several cities around the country to protest the coup. For her part, Brazil's Dilma Rousseff said she would call a referendum on holding early elections if she is reinstated as president, and offer analysts so as a bid to sway undecided senators to help clear her in an impeachment trial. If Rousseff survives the Senate trial expected to conclude in August, the Constitution would provide for her to serve out her term until 2018, although she would be scarred and in a weak position to govern. Rousseff's supporters have questioned the legitimacy of an interim government led by her vice president, Michel Temer, as protesters took to the streets of several cities in Brazil late in the first widespread organized demonstrations against Temer.
Back, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Ahmed, let me start off by asking you about how you view the situation in France. Obviously, the new labour laws aren't going down very well with French workers. So what do you think is the main problem with these laws that are being imposed?
I think the main problem, if you want a real main problem, is that people having difficulty in living now. The recession being so long. Everybody feeling it now. So you've been feeling it for so long, and people are on the edge. People are want some changes, and when they see that there's some new laws is going to come to, and this law is not going to help them, it's going to make them not get the same benefits they used to, or not or work more than they used to, or any changes that they won't like. Plus, there's other forces pushing them for protesting, like the social parties or whoever. I think they start doing that, and it happens usually when people are in a hardship and when the economy is not going well.
Right.
If the economy is going well, everything is going well, people doesn't complain usually. They do complain when they feel it, and people feel it now in Europe. They do really feel it now.
Right.
I think that's one of the main reasons of the protesting.
Why do you think, though, I mean, it seems when there's a protest against a certain law within a certain country that there is a detachment between government and the people. Why do you think this rift, we're seeing this rift in perhaps the four examples that we're going to be talking about in Venezuela, in Brazil, in Greece and in France?
In France, I mean, I've been living in France. People like to protest.
Oh, okay.
It's really, no, I don't want to say that's the reason, but it's really, I mean, always you do protest. They want to, and that's the thing I said when I went to America. I said to American people, why? American people that are not involved, they are not doing anything about politics, they don't care. They told me because in America we feel that everything cannot be any better. That's how American people feel, that it's the best. They have everything. European does not feel this way because there's different parties. There's different type of living standard in Europe than America. So I think that's why they always look for change.
Right.
That's the type of people. That's how they learn and used to. They have different parties. They always looking for change. And not recently, but in the older time, a little bit like when they have social party and the right parties, it's always big difference or big changes when one party or other can be in power. So everybody want to get his benefit from having this party or the other party. There is changes happening in Europe. I think that's why in a democratic country like France, they need to always change, to make change. And when they feel there is a hardship, they are looking for change. And the way they're doing it there is protest. It's more acceptable than any other countries. And they're used to it. And that's one of the reasons in France they do it, because they want the change to be as they want, or as this kind of, or this people, or this group of people want it to be.
Right. Let me ask you, because we know that the French people are angry with their government as the presidential elections are scheduled to take place in 2017. Do you think that what we're seeing today will have an effect on how people vote?
It should. It should. It should. But is it going to be affecting who's going to be the government, or which party is going to be?
Right.
Like, yes, it's going to be having effect, but is these people are minorities, which I think they are,
right,
or are they are majority? I think they are minority, and this minority can make too much noise, but it doesn't mean that they are majorities that they can affect the election.
Right.
So we really don't know. I think the government in Europe are more stable. So you don't see the socialism that much in Europe now, right, after the fall of Soviet Union. So things are not changing. It's getting to be more like America.
Okay. Now let's just go back quickly to discuss the Brexit, because joining us from London is Dr. Tahir Sharif, head of the British-Egyptian Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Tahir, let me ask you, obviously you're in England. Tell us what the general sentiment is, to stay or to leave the European Union?
You know, if you have asked me this question about, 3 weeks ago, I would give you a ratio of about 60 remain and 30 leave.
Right.
But, the balance now has been, drifting down to 50-50. The Leave campaign are having their very convincing tools to the British community. Those who were following the government, which is the Conservative Party, really just found out that the Conservative Party or the Remain campaign, they sometimes lie to the community. They don't have that strong justification to remain. The other thing is that the tool, which is very, very convincing and very strong in the hands of the Leave campaign, is that the immigration. Immigration is really a very, very crucial factor in this campaign. Whereas their justification is that about five countries coming from the east to join the European community, like Ukraine, like Albania, like the Bosnia, like Turkey and others, and I doubt Turkey will join.
Right.
But the thing is that that campaign really is focusing on the fact that so many of those immigrants will invade the UK territories, and they will affect and implicate on the unemployment ratio and some economic achievements which the government and the whole state achieved over the past 7 years.
Right.
And the other thing is that the Remain campaign really they have a very, very crucial economic tool in their hands, which is the investment and bilateral trade between UK and Europe at large. 51% of the trade and investments of the United Kingdom is with the European Union.
Right.
And about 2 million British are living, working, and investing in Europe. That will impact on the business achievements and economic performance of the United Kingdom. That's one of the two crucial factors and tools that are playing with each other. If you asked me about something like what is the effect of Remain or Leave on Egypt and the Middle East at large,
yes,
I would tell you that it will totally differentiate from the current situation. For instance, now the Egyptian exports does not pay tax,
right,
because it's a tax-free zone, as well as the imports tax to Egypt. This has to be renegotiated and start a bilateral trade negotiations from the very beginning, as well as with Morocco, with Lebanon, with Jordan, with the Gulf, with Algeria, and all North Africa, which is called the MENA region.
Right.
So that's number. Also, the investment treatments, the investment and the non-double taxation treatments. Also, we have to renegotiate things like that. In the meantime, if we are expecting that once the United Kingdom is out of the European Union, the value of the sterling will definitely drop sharply, at least for the first 6 months.
Right.
And this has two edges, by the way. The first edge is that the Egyptian exports to the UK will be affected, will be lowered. But on the other hand, the Egyptian imports from the United Kingdom will be much cheaper. Okay, much cheaper and much more competitive against other sources from Europe and the United States.
Right.
This is what we are expecting once. But I tell you something from from last week. Now the balance is 50-50. My assessment is within the coming few days, the Conservative Party and the Remain campaign will heavily campaign against this, and the United States will have a say, and some other countries from the Congress, from the Commonwealth,
right,
will have its say in that campaign. And my final expectation that I'm not sure that UK can afford leaving the European Union.
Just let me ask you one last thing, because obviously you're in England and we wanted to know how the media was covering it. If you've got the British Prime Minister telling the English people to stay, people around the world, especially here in Egypt, are wondering how would people in the United Kingdom be able to make their own minds, if you will, and not be fed a certain point of view over another?
If we come to the media position here is very fair and very neutral.
Right.
And and this is, there are some media, processed by the Conservative Party, with the Remain,
right,
and some other with the Leave. But because, as you may know, that the Conservative Party now is split into two. Some of the leaders are out, and the Prime Minister and his team are in. Okay, and the Labour Party as well, which is the opposition party. The opposition party also is split, but most or the majority of the opposition party is with the Remain campaign.
Yeah.
So, but I tell you, the media is very sensitive and very fair, because also the media itself is split. The media is split, but again, the media is fair, and it's not allowed to any official department out of the parties to express his
opinion.
willingness,
right,
even his willingness. It's the head of the British Chamber of Commerce is a very famous figure here. He just he has just announced and made it out that he is with the Leave campaign. Immediately, he's been asked to step down. Has been asked to shut down and step down, and he was fired from his position. That was about 1 month ago. So that it was a very hard lesson for others to express their opinions. But again, the media is fair, because the media is split as well. Right. Something like BBC never expressed its opinion in that. Because BBC is supposed to be, the main censor of the man on the streets, did not announce or did not declare their opinion sharply or clearly or soundly.
Okay, I thank you. I thank you very much. I'm going to have to thank you there, Dr. Tahir Sharif, head of the Egyptian British Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much for your time and for your insights, speaking to us live there from London. If I come back to you, Mr. Ahmed, and because we moved on, obviously, in our discussion to the protests that have taken place in France and Greece, as well as Brazil and Venezuela. If we move on to Greece, now the situation there is slightly different. It is, again, the protests have sparked once again due to the sale of the country's two biggest ports. But do you think there's more to it than that? Do you think, again, there's public discontent with austerity measures and with laws and taxes and so on and so forth that have sparked the rise again?
I'm very happy with what he said about the media fair. Media fairs, we know about the British media and the European media are fair, and they don't really affect that much the people. But what affects the people is the practicality of what's going on really. And in Greece, I think what's going on is the people really feel it's the hardest in Europe, and they feel Europe are not helping them. And all this will make them gives them frustration, and they cannot deal with. Really, they have a hard time in Greece, and the only way they can do is protesting. And this protesting also is going to hurt the country. It's like a vicious circle, and they have to enter it. And I hope they can find a way out of it. England now is a very bad time for thinking of getting out of the European Union when Greece is like that, and Greece needs help, and it's going to make all these issues difficult. And they should listen to the reason, and they should. I don't think protesting is helping the situation at all.
Okay, if we go on to Venezuela now, the situation in Venezuela is very dire. We're seeing the opposition. Well, we're seeing basic goods being unavailable to the people of Venezuela, and we're seeing the protests being flaring up because their basic commodities and their basic needs aren't being met. But then you've got Nicolas Maduro continuing to hold on to power for life, rejecting any sort of a referendum or any sort of if you will, discussion about his rule of law, which is, again, this whole point of having another dictator. Now, where do you see the situation heading from here? We're seeing protests because of lack of food, because of lack of basic goods, and we're seeing someone holding on to power.
Arab Spring again,
right.
maybe. Because if you put all the reasons and all the problems together, it will cause people to be rebelliant against the situation. I don't think it's in this time in the world that people accepting dictatorship anymore. People understanding, people there's social media, people know what's going on in the other world. And I really think it's getting very harder and harder to accept dictatorship, to accept somebody who's sitting in the power, doesn't want to move. And in the meantime, when you see that your life are affected and your life are not getting the minimum you need or the basics that any person will need, that will make you really have to protest and have to go out and ask for change. And that's what's all about.
Over in Brazil, though, the flare-up across the country is strange, because first you had people protesting against Dilma Rousseff and how she was ruling the country and so on and so forth. Then she was asked to leave, or if you want to call it, as she calls it, a coup, whatever you want to label it as. And then people now are protesting for her to come back. Now, the situation in Brazil is very unclear. What do you think is really happening in the country?
Corruption.
Right.
Third world countries, even every country almost, they have corruption to a way or other. And when this corruption gets to a way that you want to control the whole country, when you want to run the country, when you want to get rid of a president or want to keep a president, that's when it gets messy and you don't really understand what's going on. Removing her from power, I don't know how this was done, but I don't think if it was completely the way it should be done. And but she's still powerful and strong, and there's people protesting for her. But how all this could be corrected when the situation is like that, when people are protesting for different reasons, for different things, for the political life are not established, I think, the way it should be. If it's established the way it should be, this wouldn't happen in the first place, and this kind of what you call a coup would not happen, as you would do through election or regular election. But when these countries are not, they are new in democracy, and the new is like most countries in the third world. When they are new, that's the changes will happen, and this is the problems they have until they reach a point where they can be established, and when people understand what democracy is and what's the way they should go about it. Like in America, people know that if we want to change something, we'll change it without protesting, without all this. We'll just sign a letter and we'll collect signatures, and things change this way. But it's a different culture and a different democracy, and they need to reach the point when things get more stable.
Right, okay. I thank you very much, Mr. Ahmed Salwan, political analyst, for coming in tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.